If you're a BMW enthusiast, then you don't need an introduction for this car, but I'll give you one anyway. Our spotlight today is on this 1991 BMW 850i. This is BMW's pillarless V12 6-speed manual Grand Tour. There is a lot going on with this car, and we very rarely see them on the road, so we're so excited that we have the opportunity to show you this one here. We're going to show you all its features, get driven in it, and go over everything you need to know if you're in the market for the E31 8 Series. Red is one of those colors that really stands out, and I know you might think that this is a Mola red or Hellrot red, but it's actually brilliant red, and it really looks great. The paint on this car is just immaculate, and you'll notice that the design is very similar to the BMW M1. They've got these super little kidney grills up front, and if you take a look at the 7 Series that we filmed, the E38, or really any BMW since, I mean, the kidney grill is the whole thing, whereas these are just really small, and it's a really interesting design. And the other thing that people like myself love, pop-up headlights. You don't see that anymore, basically because of a safety issue, but it gives this car more aerodynamic when you're not using the headlights. And then below you do have your fog lights and a whole bunch of air ducts to get air into this big engine itself. The rims are original BMW. They're just not specific to this car itself, but they do look good. And again, one of the things that you really get with the 8 Series are pillarless windows here. When you drop the windows down, there's nothing in between. It's just an open cavern between everything going inside the car there. So looks very nice, very original to the 90s era of vehicles. You really don't see that, and especially now, I mean, BMW just doesn't make a car that even looks remotely like this. Out back it is a little different too. The 8 Series is kind of a different vehicle in BMW's lineup back in the 90s because it wasn't quite like a 7 Series coupe. It was really its own vehicle. So when you take a look at the back, it does kind of have a little bit of a similar cue with the taillights and the back end to the E32 7 Series from the time, but it really is unique to this car. And it's got quad exhaust at the back and really very clean. There's not much going on, just the 850i badge, and then they added the C because they were changing things up. All the coupes in BMW's lineup got a C, but this one is technically and legally an 850i. Now I know you guys are going to say that I don't fit in this. I get it, I'm a big guy. And it's true, I don't really fit. Even my head, I mean, I'm at the top. I don't think the seat goes down any further, so I can't really get my head in here. But if you take a look at 90s, 80s BMW design, everything was always driver focused, and you can't get much more driver focused than this. You've got your check computer up top, followed by original BMW cassette player, and your more or less dual zone climate control. It's not digital, it's all analog. You've got vents up top, same kind of rotary knob to change between hot and cold. And then you've got your fog lights, both front and rear, or off completely. And your headlights up top, a little different. BMW, a little bit later on, they were using switches. These are kind of like a knob almost, but it's a very tight design here, considering this is the 8 Series. You'd think it'd be a little bit bigger. The back seats, as it is right now, are unusable. But the center console runs along all the way to the back. So if you did actually have people back there, they'd have a nice armrest. You can certainly call for pizza if you want. Hello. And this is original, really nice quality here. You can put your programmed favorites in here. So if you need to call up for pizza, then you've got that there, quite nice. Ashtray in the center there with your hazard switch. And really there's not much. You've got your manual brake here and your stability control. It's a very simple vehicle, and especially with that 6-speed, this is the one that people are always after when they're looking for the 8 Series. Now obviously the 850 CSI is the one to get, but the 850i is certainly one that people want to get with the 6-speed manual, because, you know, how many cars can you say have a V12 with a manual transmission? Maybe back in the day there were a little bit more, but especially today they just don't exist. So this is a very rare car in that sense, and you just don't see a lot of them in the road, but it is such a treat to be able to sit in here. Now, if you're an enthusiast and you know a lot about these cars, you'll know that the M Sport steering wheel is not original here. It does have the tri-color piping along the side here. The stitching is quite nice, but this doesn't come on this car. This is more of an older sort of a M5, E39 style wheel here, but the owners put it in here, and it looks very good. I mean, if you weren't an enthusiast or you weren't a diehard and you knew every single detail about the E31, then you'd think that this looks pretty good. It fits along with the rest of the design of the interior here, and it doesn't feel out of place. Now the passenger doesn't have really any access to any of the controls here, but they do have a dual glove box. So you pop up the top one or pop down the bottom one, and you can get your owner's manual there. And I guess, you know, I can't really put anything there, but it's indented a little bit, almost as if you were to put your espresso cup, that are quite useless. And that's it. There's a sunroof up top. There's LED lights that the owner's upgraded. But other than that, it is a very straightforward vehicle, and there's no safety information here. No airbags. At least there aren't any warnings for them. I believe that the car would have an airbag from the factory.
There are a few other tidbits we missed before getting to the road test. The washer fluid has a small reservoir under the hood, but you actually fill it up in the trunk. BMW added the full reservoir under the tire in order to maximize weight distribution, since this was one of the few cars designed at the time using computer-aided design, or CAD technology. This car does have the optional CSI body kit on it, and the rims are Style 42 two-piece alloys. The car originally optioned with Style 8 rims, as you can see from the spare tire in the trunk, but I think that the E46 rims give this car a more sporty appearance and is a nice change from the usual M parallel rims that we see on these cars. Now that we've gone over the tech and details of this car, let's fire it up and get it on the road.
Now, I'm in the passenger seat here because the owners preferred that he drives it, just because there is a bit of a wobble with the steering, and that's something that actually is quite common with the E38 7 Series. We've heard a lot of people have that issue. So over a certain speed, steering gets really wobbly. So I'm happy to be a passenger in this, because you really don't get an opportunity to see these cars. Not only do I not see them on the road, but you know, to be in one is an experience on its own. So we're going to get the first-hand experience of being driven in this car right here, and to feel too what the difference is with the 5-liter V12 over the 5.4 found in the the V12 7 Series that we did about 6 months ago now. So we're going to go for a little drive, same kind of area. If you're familiar with that episode that we did, you'll notice some of the surroundings here as we're driving along. And I got to say that space is certainly tight here, but it's actually not too bad compared to a lot of cars that I've been in, where I've been in the passenger seat, especially a performance car like this. I'm actually quite comfortable with the legroom. It's just the headroom. I'm pretty much at the max that I can get to. I guess if I sit back, it's still kind of on the roof. So I'm just about 6 feet tall, so that's why. But I got to say that the drive is certainly different. You can feel a little bit more of the road than you do on more of the luxury-oriented version of BMW's cars, but you do hear that exhaust out the back, and it's got a little grumble. You can hear it. Oh yeah. It's nothing like a V12, and this is pretty much stock. Yeah, there's not a whole lot going on, any modifications on top of it. So if you're looking for a pure version of an 850i, this is it. So you don't have to worry about heavily modified engine or suspension or exhaust. This is pretty much what came out of the factory, and I like that sound. You do get a little bit of the grumble as we pull up to about, this is only 3,000 RPM. You know, it certainly has some pull in, I don't know, 4th, 6th. So you can definitely feel it. The car wants to go. It's got the power. And it's around 280, 290 horsepower. It's not as powerful as the V12 found in the later 7 Series. And again, these cars, even though the 8 Series was meant more for performance, yeah, it's just not the same as today, where a car like this, if BMW really does put that 8 Series into production, it's probably going to have 650 horsepower minimum, whereas this is half of that. But I think that these are going to be way more fun, because people love the look of this car. I mean, helps having pop-up headlights, certainly looks amazing, but you know, you don't see these. You don't see these cars on the road. You don't see this style of design anymore, and it's really unique. And I think people who even aren't BMW enthusiasts, and people who aren't even car enthusiasts, they really see this as something special. It's nice to be able to drive around in it, because I think this car gets a lot of looks, especially from the BMW community, because even they don't see them too often. Oh, there you go. Yeah, this car pulls. You feel it. You can feel it. This is probably the one vehicle that we've driven in that you really feel probably more connected to the car. I can feel everything as the gears are being shifted, and more than any of the other car, you just feel that V12 wants to go, and that this is more machine than anything else. That this has, you know, we talked about it with the Mazda 6 video a while ago. It has a soul. I think that the 8 Series definitely has its own soul, and it just wants to go all the time. You can feel it. It's a real performance. Go from a dig here. That's interesting because we're filming this on the same day that we just filmed the 97 S-Class. And I gotta say that this feels much more powerful. The S-Class with the straight pipe exhaust certainly has way more sound to it, but you definitely feel that the V12 in a smaller chassis, really much more performance oriented, can get power to where it needs to go. And I think that this would be a lot of fun if you took it on a track, you were racing it a little bit more than just on your traditional streets here. I think that this could be a really fun car, but I gotta say that that V12 in its original note sounds really good. I think that if you start messing with the exhaust on this, it's not going to be as nice. I think you really should leave it the way that they designed it, because it's just got that it's the right amount of sound to it, right kind of grumble for the size and speed of the vehicle, and it really sounds nice just driving down the street here. I don't know if the microphone picks it up, but it's a good sound. That brings us back to the point that we had with our V8 versus V12 7 Series. Is it just as good to get the V8 version of this, or do you need the V12? And I said with the 7 Series, you can live with the V8 and you're still going to be happy. I think with this, though, you really do need that V12. I mean, you know, the V8 has its perks, but unlike with the 7 Series, where if you get an E38 and it's got the V8, people are still going to look. I think if people see you in the V8, they're always going to wonder, why didn't you go with the V12? So you really got to get the 850 with this. And then again, you could say, well, you got to get the CSI as well. And if you find one that isn't, you know, $200,000, go for it. But those cars have really shot up in price. But I think you still get quite a bit of power out of this without having to go up to that astronomical price. But what a treat to be able to be in this car today. It's so unique. Really reminds you that BMW was doing some pretty amazing things back in the 90s. And really similar interior. We're hoping we can feature like an E32 7 Series and an E34 5 Series, and you can see that the interiors are very well laid out, very similar. And I know people complain about that with exterior design, especially with newer cars, that they're all the same, they all look the same. Well, it's not new. They've been doing it for a while, but this is a really well engineered version of BMW's ultimate driving machine.
As mentioned during our road test, the steering shimmy is one of the common problems with this car, and can be as simple as control arm bushings or as costly as an entire suspension rebuild. The transmissions should also be inspected, and considering most will want to find a manual, make sure that the maintenance has been kept up in order to avoid issues in that department. Like with any old luxury car we feature, we always recommend going over the complete car to inspect every panel and hinge. Some of these E31s have been insanely well taken care of over the years, and others have been left to rot. The 840ci seems to be the most neglected, so if you're in the market for the V8, definitely look around for signs that the car has been sitting for years. With any car, we also recommend taking it to a trusted mechanic before making any purchase. These cars are quite possibly some of the best BMW ever made, and the excitement to own one is certainly going to be overwhelming, but you want to make sure that the E31 you're looking at has the potential to keep you happy, rather than sitting at the shop all the time. Head over to bimmerforums.com. Their E38 community is one of the most active on the internet, with plenty of buying advice and DIY troubleshooting tips. That's the place that I would start if I was ready to dive into BMW's one and only 8 Series Grand Tourer. Thanks for watching this episode of Test Drive Spotlight on the 1991 BMW 850i. This has been an amazing experience for us to feature a car like this. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did being driven in it. Do you think that the 8 Series really competed with something like the Mercedes CL600? Or was the S-Class Coupe more of a personal luxury car, whereas the 8 Series was a true performance-oriented GT car? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, your support makes this show possible, and why we're able to make trips like our 2,000-kilometer voyage to Toronto a reality in order for us to film classic cars like this. The more this channel grows, the more opportunities we'll have to share vehicles like this. Until next time, take care.